Who said water is a human right? I do. I do say that. And if people like you are the kinds of people that Palestinians had to deal with when they tried to fight for their rights, no shit they turned to Hamas. Because they probably thought that, I don't know, bombing buildings full of people like you is a far more effective route to their freedom than trying to explain to people like you why they deserve to have water as a human right.
So you don't consider Hamas to be a dictatorship?
It's a prison that Israel created that has a prison gang that runs it. They had a government, and that government tried to fight for their rights, and it didn't work. Israel wouldn't listen.
I think it's probably okay to call... Hamas are a government. They collect taxes, they provide jobs, they have a police force, they do have military, like they have militants, they have training facilities for their military. Some of them were actually strangely close to the border. This is good, because I haven't seen that much of Vaush's perspective on this. Maybe in an hour we'll get a good holistic view, shall we?
I gotta say, I'm very curious as to how libertarianism could possibly lead you to support Israel, considering the fact that in terms of like the representation of statehood, Israel is much more like willing to impose force on the freedom of individuals than anything like represented by Palestine.
Straight with the
I get where you're coming from. I wouldn't say like I'm a fan of Israel. I would say if I would have to make a choice in the conflict, which side I would support, I would go with Israel, because I think they respect individual rights more than Hamas, which is currently running Gaza. So in a situation where there would be some sort of secular or like moderate government in Gaza, and they would be able to represent themselves, I would be fine with them having a Palestinian country. I would fully support that.
But there
so
was
in that sense, yeah.
Well, there was a secular moderate government, and it was sort of like deliberately pushed out by Israel. Like Israel took the land, ethnically cleansed the area, have been restricting the rights of the Palestinian minority for nearly a century now, and Netanyahu and his predecessors have worked to push the Palestinians into a position.
Wait, what moderate government is he talking about there? That Israel pushed out? When they ethnically cleansed? Like what, before 48? There wasn't a moderate government before 48. There was like no government, really. All the leaders were in fucking Beirut and Cairo. Okay.
They're more and more likely to radicalize and sort of militantly oppose Israel, which I can't really blame them for, considering the fact that peace didn't really get them anywhere.
You mean you can't blame the Palestinians?
Yeah, I can't really blame the Palestinians for thinking that, like, militant terrorism is the only potential solution for them, considering the fact that, like, there were decades of, like, Palestinian Authority and efforts at peace talks, and it seemed like no matter what happened, just the Palestinian rights got eroded further and further.
But don't you agree with me that a lot of it is due to the Palestinian leadership? Like, there were plenty of opportunities where they had, like, good offers on the table. And let's be honest, they lost many wars. You and I both know how wars work. If you fight a war...
I still maintain, I don't think Camp David was a good idea, was a good offer. I think the Clinton parameters that were offered quite like just after Camp David, I think they made a lot more sense. But I think the PLO rejected the Clinton parameters to begin with. And then there was when the Intifada started, and then they went to Taba, and by the time Taba started, it was too late. Isn't that what happened?
You lose land.
I'll have to look into that.
And that's how it always used to work up until now.
Well,
so if you lose like 3 wars in a row and you still get offered 92%, like that's a pretty good deal. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, that's not what happened. The area was controlled by the British Mandate, and when they decided to engage in the Zionist project, they engaged in the Nakba, and they deposed hundreds of thousands.
He's confusing Camp David with 1948, with a partition plan. 92%. Uh-oh. We're running into a bit of a trap here. Uh-oh. Okay. Camp David was 76. No, Camp David that I'm talking about. When people talk about 92% of the land, they're talking about Camp David in 2000. This. The one where the final Israeli offer was this, right? Or I don't think the final offer was actually drawn, but it was something similar to this. It basically had a cut from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea. It had a cut through the Ariel settlement, and it had the fucking Israelis temporarily controlling bits of the Jordan Valley. And then Palestinians were like, no, fuck this. We're not even going to put a counteroffer. And then I think Clinton offers the Clinton parameters just after it, which is a much more conjoined, like contiguous West Bank. Is it this one? Is this the Clinton parameters?
Remember the Holodomor?
Where the fuck did that? Oh. Yeah, this. But then I think they fucked this one off as well for a bit. But then Taba started with this as the starting point. But then by the time the Taba negotiations started, it was already too late because Barak had basically lost his mandate and Shrum was going to win the next election. And Clinton was on his way out as well. Yeah, there were two Camp Davids. There was the Camp David with, between Israel and Egypt. And there was the Camp David in 2000 where the Israelis offered a final settlement of two states. But the two states, the Palestinian state, the steel man is that there were just too many fucking ifs and buts around and conditions around those two states that Palestine would have functionally not really been a sovereign state. They wouldn't have had control over their airspace. They would have not been contiguous. There was too much ambiguity over how long Israel intended to keep the Jordan Valley. There was too much ambiguity over what was going to happen with that like big strip that cut through the West Bank that was controlled by Israel. But the problem is that Arafat also didn't really make a counteroffer. He just walked. Some people say that the well was already poisoned to begin with on Camp David before it started because Barak hadn't completed the third redeployment out of the West Bank, which he was supposed to do as part of the Oslo Accords. But he would argue that Palestinians didn't fulfill their end of the Oslo Accords in time because they weren't appropriately disarming militant factions, especially the Tanzim, which was also part of the conditions of the Oslo Accords. So, And I think the impression I've got is that Arafat probably assumed that muscling and using the violence of the Intifada would allow him to get a better deal. He thought that they could get a better deal through showing more strength and being more fucking hardline. But the result was that it got Sharon elected and then all the negotiations ended. So, yeah. Wasn't a good move. Bad move. Have you forgotten the best peace plans 2008 or the Trump peace plan? No, I did forget those ones. Those bangers.
Thousands of people. A process which began before there was even any direct conflict. Like this opened with people. This project area was controlled by
good 3 wars in a row and you still get offered 92%. Like that's a pretty good deal. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, that's not what happened. The area was controlled by the British mandate, and when they decided to engage in the Zionist project, they engaged in the Nakba, and they deposed hundreds of thousands of people. A process which began before...
Did he say the British? What's he saying here?
Mandate, and when they decided to engage in the Zionist project, they engaged in the Nakba, and they deposed hundreds of thousands of people. A process which began before there was even any direct conflict. Like this opened with ethnic cleansing, and since then, Palestinians have sort of lost. But I don't really believe in might makes right. Like I don't think that because you've won a war of conquest, you get to just indefinitely genocide the lesser ethnic group.
Well, a lot hangs on the word conquest there. So you're saying that when the Nakba started, it wasn't triggered by anything. It was just Israel just came in, threw those people out. There was no aggression initially
No.
from the Arab states surrounding. There was no disagreement about the peace deal. There were no Arab resentments about this Jewish state in their midst.
I don't
Is
like
that
the
what you're claiming?
I don't like the implication that Palestinians and everyone associated with them has to be perfect and peaceful at all times, or it's justified to do a genocide against them. Like, Palestinians and the Arab states have done things that I find disagreeable. None of that changes the fact that Israel chooses to commit a genocide, chooses to deprive them of their rights, chooses to keep them in an apartheid state. Like, the idea of, even if we were to accept the idea that, like, the Palestinians have consistently been the ones to engage in aggression, which is simply not true. The opening of this whole thing, the Nakba, was predicated by scuffling in the area between, like, Jewish, British, and Arab groups, but the mass violence was absolutely put forward first, you know, by the Israelis with the sort of, like, implied permission of the British mandate. But even with all that taken, like, acknowledged, you know, right now Israel has
implied I don't think he knows. Implied permission of the British mandate. What with the Nakba? Like, I don't. The British had didn't they have an arms embargo at that time? They'd left it up to the UN, and they had an arms embargo on both sides. I think
you smarmy.
I need to remember my timings.
Bastard.
Were the Brits not still allowing arms? Were Britain and France not still allowing arms to the Arab states after they put the embargo on Palestine? Or did they stop both at the same time? Because I think for a period before the, like, around 47, 48, the Arab states were actually better equipped than the Zionists until the Zionists managed to turn the balance through Czechoslovakia. But I don't know the exact timeline of the British embargoes on the Zionists and then on the Arab states. Okay. Partial pressure, thanks to the $9.99. Inappropriate for Lonerbox to go over the facts and history instead of just winging it and accusing everyone of genocide. Okay, yeah, nice one. Is it so hard to concede that there was a lot of killing on all sides in the years before 1948? Yeah, I know. Like, it's easy to acknowledge that the Arabs started a war, that there was violence happening, and Israel was actually on the defensive. Before the Nakba, the attacks were on Jewish settlements first of all. At the once the partition plan was rejected, but that doesn't justify Israel's plan, which was to go around all these villages, and they're very permissive. There's leadership's very permissive attitude towards expelling fucking hundreds of thousands of people. So. And it doesn't excuse Deir Yassin. It doesn't excuse, like, the expulsions of Lida and Ramla. It doesn't excuse the way that they won those wars in Jaffa and Haifa and fucking all those other places. Like, so, yeah. But I just think Vaush might not know. I don't think he knows the details. Or
the power, and they're using that power to commit genocide and to commit ethnic cleansing. Nothing justifies that, even if the Palestinians have in the past been antagonistic to the concept of their own removal.
I don't like the use of the word genocide because I don't really find the proof for it. Like, if you look at the population numbers, they're always going up. I don't mean that like as a corny thing to say or something, but like, how is it a genocide when they have all the power Israel has militarily, but the population keeps growing?
Wasn't Lida and Ramla a kind of tactical move? Yeah, because they wanted to secure the fucking... Oh, God. Was Lida and Ramla the Jerusalem corridor? That's why it was such a big removal in that area? That's still not justified. I don't think you have the right to fucking force out all the civilians. Like, tens of thousands of them. Wasn't 10% of the people expelled were just from Lida and Ramla? It was a huge number. It's like 40, 50, 60, like, yeah, it's 50, 60, 70,000 people. Yeah. Shit. Was it? It was high. It was big. It was big numbers. Okay. I've given myself too much scope. Hang on. How many cunts were expelled from Lida and Ramla? 50 to 60,000. Hey, okay, good. Okay, well done. Wow, stop doubting yourself, Lonerbox. God damn it!
Year by year, and you keep claiming it's a genocide. It's a little bit weird to me.
Well, the population doesn't necessarily have to decrease for the genocide. But even by the UN definition, it could be like
kind of
to impose
does.
measures intended to prevent births within a group, or to forcibly transfer children, or to attempt to bring about the physical destruction of a group. The reason that the population's been exploding is because a lot of Palestinians are crammed into an open-air prison where they have nothing to do but like they don't have much going on in there, you know. But like they're forced into a tiny tract of land. They're treated as second-class citizens. Their rights are being withered away. They're denied things like power and water and food. And right now we're seeing it. Like right now, like 2/3 the population of the Gaza Strip is without housing. It's unlikely they'll be allowed to return to northern Gaza, which means this at the very least fits the definition of an ethnic cleansing, you know. But already 15,000 have died. I mean, it's very clearly like a war for eradication.
I don't find it clearly at all. Like, if this was a war for eradication, Israel would have been, they wouldn't have sent out warnings. They wouldn't have told people to leave for the south or for the north. I'm not sure. So it doesn't really fit. Or is this like all a big facade? I'm sorry. I get if you're saying war crimes. Maybe I can get along with that, but I just don't get the genocide claim, and I think it's like unnecessarily troubling to the discussion to call it a genocide.
Oh, no. They give those warnings for our benefit, right? Like the only reason, in my opinion, the only reason Israel hasn't just slaughtered all of them is because the world is watching. Like there are limits to what Israel can get away with. The more
this is the thing, though. If they're, then you're saying that they're not doing it, though, right? Then they're not doing the eradication because the world's watching. But you just said they were doing eradication. So this is the same argument I had with Vivian, I think, and it's the problem when you do this thing where you start with a conclusion and then walk backwards from it. You start by saying they want to wipe them all out. I'm like, they want to genocide them. I'm like, okay, if they want to genocide them, why is the death rate like lower than what Hamas was able to achieve as a death rate, like within 24 hours? Within 24 hours, Hamas killed 1,200 people, right? So within 50 days, they would already have like 50,000 dead, and they've got like a fraction of the military strength that Israel has. A fraction. It's not even remotely comparable. They have a fraction of the defenses and a fraction of the offenses, but they were still able to achieve more deaths per, like, within that small space of time, like for the time that they had. But then you say, oh, actually, yeah, no, they do actually want to do the mass fucking annihilation. They're just not doing it because the world's watching. Well, that's like, okay, or that's just not their intent. Like, you can still criticize their intent because their intent is to fuck shit up until Hamas is gone, and that's not a really good plan. That's a really bad plan, because especially if you don't know what's going to follow it, if there's no guarantee of you achieving it in the first place, and you're just willing to let like tens of thousands of people die for this incredibly nebulous objective, that's a problem. But yeah.
Agonizes its neighboring Arab states, the more it makes itself unpalatable.
Matthew Faustini, thanks for the tier 1 sub. Really appreciate that.
To like American voters, the more Israel has to restrict itself. But in terms of like war for eradication, that's the only direction this is all going, right? Like they've been continuing to expand illegal settlements in the West Bank for like over 50 years now. And with regards to the Gaza Strip, there doesn't seem to be like any other direction this is going. Like what happens to the Palestinian people, right? In the West Bank, they're being pushed out illegally, like bit by bit. And in the Gaza Strip, it's like, what are they supposed to do? Like they don't control anything. They don't control their own resources, their food, their water, their power. There doesn't seem to be any effort to integrate them. Like if you keep people in a prison forever, like even right now, there are members of the Israeli government that are just openly saying, this is our chance to get them all out. Like they're saying it openly.
Yeah. So like I agree with you on this part. I think this situation brings out the worst on both sides, right? So obviously, all the extreme religious Israeli guys are going to seize this opportunity. I agree with you. This is their opportunity to get the land they always wanted, to make their Jewish religious dream.
Maruzzi, thanks for the sub. I really appreciate that. Hey, Twitch chat, Drew.
Come true, whatever the hell, right? I'm an atheist. I don't care for that shit.
But they're in the government. They're doing it, though.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But as long as Hamas exists, that's not going to stop. Right? You agree with me? Like, as long as Hamas is ruling Gaza, those guys are not going to get voted out probably, or they're going to be popular. They're going to have influence.
So you're saying
So
all Israel would have to do to genocide the Palestinians is make sure that Hamas is in charge?
I would say if you are an Israeli and you want to eradicate the Palestinians, yes,
Well,
that would
then,
be in your
but that's what
would want that.
happened. Netanyahu funded Hamas, gave them money in briefcases, and had other like governmental organizations within the Gaza Strip declared terrorist organizations and arrested. Like, there's been a protracted effort from Israel.
Okay, but I'm also a big fan of agency.
So again, he didn't give them money. He allowed money to go through that was already getting sent through by Qatar. And he allowed that money to go through partially first because the PA had frozen money to Gaza and there might have been a humanitarian issue. But also, yeah, partly because he wanted to buy quiet from Hamas because he thought that it would end the border wall protests, which it actually did for a brief period. But it was no, he didn't give them money. It's not different. Maybe not the most accurate wording.
And now it sounds like there's only a one-way streak, right? Like Palestinians have free will. Palestinians can
How
make
much power
choices.
do Palestinians have compared to the government of Israel? Like, on one hand, you have like the residents of an open-air prison, and on the other hand, you have a modern military nation state backed by the most powerful country on earth.
I would say this: Palestinians have one of the most popular causes in the world. If they would push up, if they would have a couple of moderate guys representing them, they could make a lot of bank on this Palestinian cause.
They do.
There's they could have a great economy. They could have amazing.
No, it was suitcases full of money though, wasn't it? I thought it was, yeah, I think that part's true. It was suitcases full of money through Qatar. Yeah.
How?
Economic opportunities.
Wait.
Well,
how would they have a great?
Get rid of Hamas.
Wait. First of all, the Palestinian Authority already exists, and nobody pays attention to them. They haven't had an election since 2006, and Israel pushed Hamas to be in charge because they have power in the situation. Also, how would they have a great economy? They don't control their own anything. It's not a free country.
Well, obviously not at this moment. We agree on that, but you like geopolitically, don't you agree with me that having Hamas in power weakens their case?
Yeah, that's why Israel put them there.
Yeah. Okay, but you and I both agree that Hamas needs to go in order for the Palestinians to have any chance.
Yeah, but Hamas and the situation that led to Hamas was imposed by Israel. Like, if you continuously ethnically cleanse a group of people and show them that diplomacy doesn't matter because it doesn't lead to any gains, they'll choose terrorism. And that's not Palestinian specific. America did that in the American Revolution. Like, initially there were missives written to the King of England as a way of trying to like mitigate the taxes or try to like grant greater freedoms to the colonists. It was only after the chance at diplomacy seemed as though it couldn't like even work that we turned to terrorism. And that was what the American Revolution was to begin with. It was terrorism. It was people attacking, like, in a lot of cases.
Yeah, no, like saying Israel put Hamas there is like, yeah, it's just not. Okay. Oh God. You could argue that they knew it was going to happen when they pulled out. Netanyahu warned about that, of all people. A bunch of people said Hamas are going to take over if you fuck out of Gaza, and they did. Hamas is like, I don't know what's happening.
These are civilian targets, like, you know, royal appointed officials over here, to sort of like secure a political goal. Like, this is how it always happens, right? You give people hope for diplomacy, and if you can't give them that, like, they will take violence. But that's not like the Palestinians' fault. That's just what Israel's forced on them.
But it is the Palestinians' fault that they're ruled by Hamas, right?
Well, I don't think so. No.
It just happened to them. They all just chose Hamas involuntarily.
Yeah, this fucking libertarian guy is going to make a horrible argument. Like, you can make the argument that Hamas doesn't. They, like, of course they survive in part because Israel supports, not supports, but because Israel basically demoralizes the population. But again, Hamas won their election after Israel pulled out of Gaza, not when they strengthened their hold over Gaza. But Hamas came to power. Well, the peace process has failed. Lots of people had died in the Intifada at the hands of Israelis, and but it's also the fact that the oppressed thing again. Like, the narrative explains why people might vote for Hamas. Like that explains it in part, but it doesn't explain why foreign powers are willing to back Hamas, because Hamas doesn't survive on their own. They need help from Iran, from Gaza, from Qatar, like yeah, and those countries are not oppressed. They don't support Hamas because they're oppressed. Yeah.
Like,
well, no,
they have
the
agency
conditions,
too.
the conditions that they had a secular popular leadership. It didn't do anything. Hamas was directly funded by Netanyahu. Like the idea to just throw your arms up in the air and go like, oh, guess they chose this, like really kind of overwrites.
I think people are getting their timelines really fucked here as well. I've heard someone else say this before. Do people think that Netanyahu funded Hamas like in the 2000s to get before they came into power? But the way people tell this story, it sounds like that's what they're saying. But Hamas were not getting supported by Israel in any sense of the word before they got elected. But yeah, I feel like that's what people are. That's the assumption it sounds like people are making. The Netanyahu scandal was between 2013 and 2018, I think. Not before, no. Didn't he fund it when they were a charity? One Israeli governor of Gaza, like this brigadier general guy, gave money to mosques. Yeah, that Mujama al-Islamiyah were working with. But that's yeah, that's not only when they were a charity, but that's also when they were the non-violent alternative. So Israel actually, the only time Israel directly gave money to the only time Israel ever gave money to to Hamas was when they were a non-violent group, when they were a charity. And that was back when the PLO were the ones who were doing terrorism against civilians. So, yeah.
If they just chose this, Israel wouldn't have had to put their thumb on the scale so aggressively.
I wouldn't go so far to say.
Also,
I
quick
guess
question.
they chose this.
Really quickly,
sure.
as an anti-statist, why do you even care that they support Hamas? Hamas is an anti-state, like, terrorist organization that's trying to break the back of the of the statehood that is violating their rights. Like, principally speaking, shouldn't you be in favor of terrorism if it means breaking a population free from tyrannical statehood?
Well, I'm not an ANCAP, so I'm a minarchist, right? So I don't consider government to be an evil concept. I just think government needs to be strictly limited. So in that sense, I am an anti-statist if you're talking about interfering with the economy, taxation, all that stuff, but not when it comes to, like, there are legitimate functions of government. I recognize a couple of them.
Well, then you're
Defense.
not like libertarian,
So I'm not
right?
an ANCAP. So I'm not an ANCAP.
Well, you're not a libertarian. You're in favor of literally the most tyrannical element of statehood. You're like, I don't want there to be business taxes, but I am okay with police states and authoritarian regimes.
Well, I don't know how you guys have it in the US, but in the Netherlands, there are not that many libertarians. So the few that are there are separated by minarchism and ANCAPs. So the objectivists are always the minarchists. Then you have some Friedmanites, you have some Hayekians. They are minarchist. And then you have the ANCAPs. They like Rothbard, they like Hoppe. And that's basically the split in the Netherlands. But it's a very small fringe group here.
I mean, I'm also a libertarian, but like that stems fundamentally from desire for freedom.
Well, you say you're libertarian. I think it's a interesting.
Well, I believe in freedom for people, not freedom for corporations. But, whatever the case may be, like, there is no freedom in the Gaza Strip. Like, they literally are in a fence. Like, they're fenced off. There are automatic turrets and security cameras and snipers pointed inward at all times. Like, we're talking about a group of people who are, like, America, to some element at least, is a police state. They literally live in a prison. Like, they can't leave. Like, they're just kept in a camp, Like, it seems like Hamas is sort of like the, in that context, you'd think that's a pretty appropriate breakage of statehood.
No, but come on, man. Like, Hamas is misusing a lot of funds. Hamas is destroying the water supply by building rockets with that shit.
Like, Israel cuts off the water supply. Wait. If you have an issue with the water supply in the Gaza Strip, that's on Israel, nobody else. They literally cut and restrict water access over there. So Hamas tears up a few pipes to fight back against the state that's bleeding them dry, and that makes them responsible for the... what's the problem with just admitting that, like, Israel is creating all of these negative situations?
I really wish we could live in an alternate reality, because I don't really know what would happen. I wish we could live in an alternative reality where Israel leaves Gaza, Hamas gets elected, but it's the Hamas of the 70s, the non-violent Hamas. And they just focus all their funds, like the non-corrupt Hamas as well. And they just focus all their funding on charity and like welfare and building up Gaza. I just wonder what that would look like what Israel would do. Because I don't think you would have had like 7 wars. If we admit that Israel cares about what they look like on the world stage, they wouldn't like that's why they don't airstrike the West Bank. So why would they airstrike Gaza if that's what Hamas were like? I don't know why people talk about like they do this thing like to fight back. Like Hamas have to fight back. What does Hamas fighting achieve? It achieved nothing. I don't think there would have been a Palestinian state. Shut up. There probably wouldn't have been a Palestinian state. I don't think that would have been the answer.
Israel. Like, if you continuously ethnically cleanse a group of people and show them that diplomacy basically like humiliated and tortured them like for years and years and decades and decades and decades, and over time things got worse in that camp and they formed like prison gangs, and eventually the biggest meanest prison gang with like the white skinheads or whatever was like, listen folks, okay, I know you don't all like me, but I'm the only one tough enough here to break us out of here. And then like you look at the situation, you're like, ah, well look, they've decided to side with these like skinheads or whatever to break out of prison. How is it the fault of the prisoners, when in reality the whole condition, like everything that led to this was constructed?
But you're leaving out so much context. Like, for instance, even if you go back to the Nakba...
Lonerbox, you should talk to Vaush at some point. He really needs to understand the history better. Look, I would like to, okay? What I don't like, though, is going into Vaush's DMs and being like, here, mate, can I just, like, correct you on 20 things? Can I just come in and educate you, brother? Can I just come in and, like... fill up the blind spots? No, it'll be like an argument or yeah, fuck. I don't know. Yeah, re-education.
Incident, right, from 1948, I think it was. Yeah, like, I am sure that there was aggression on the side of Arab states. And
what's the difference with how you correct Destiny? The difference is that Destiny has a little room in his fucking Discord that I can just jump into and be like, hey, let's talk about this. I feel like one of the first times I went into Vaush's Discord, there's a whole thing, I wonder if it's still there, where it says, like, don't come on if you're just here to, like, educate Vaush on blind spots, right? If I have blind spots, like, people can come in and tell me. I'm okay with that. Like, Destiny likes that as well, but I don't think Vaush likes it. Where is it? It's in the waiting room of his Discord. Is it in the rules? God, he's got a lot of rules in his Discord. Shit. Yeah, anyway.
They convinced the Palestinians to, like, let us have a go at Israel, and it failed. And
did Palestinians ever really try the soft approach? Kind of. Like, the PLO did renounce terrorism and recognize Israel, at least on paper, but they always had a militant wing. Even Fatah always had a militant wing. No, they were never completely peaceful, but I would argue they can't be. They can't protest like in the West Bank and shit like that. So that's not exactly the answer. There needs to be some kind of like militancy, just not. Yeah, but it tends to always be like targeting civilians and shit, and that's not cool.
Israel clapped back. That is not saying the clapback was fully good, obviously.
I didn't say Vaush was the tanky. Oh, you're talking to someone in chat. Okay. Yeah, no, Vaush is not he's definitely not a tanky. No.
I'm sure there were war crimes on both sides. I acknowledge all that. But
so wait, what do you think happened?
Yeah. What I think happened, I think there were tensions. I think the Arabs were very displeased with how the land was divided up. And I might even agree with them on that for a great part. And the Arab states surrounding were not happy, like Syria. So they said to the Palestinians, like, let's have at them. And
Okay.
then it failed.
So
and Israel clapped back and took like Jerusalem and took
no,
pieces of land.
No, in 48, the Palestinians lived there. The British mandate in the area, like that was like Arab territory. There were Jewish groups there, but like for the most part, like the Palestinians
And they bought
lived there.
they bought a lot of land, those Jewish groups.
Yeah, well, the United Nations voted on the partition plan, which divided the territory into Jewish and Arab sovereign states. The plan was rejected by Palestinian leaders, but you know their word didn't count for much. So, with like foreign rule and imposition dividing people up, it led to increasing conflict until eventually, with overwhelming military might and munitions backed by the British, the Zionists cleared out nearly 1 million Palestinians and took over most of the land.
The Zionists were not backed by the British in 48. Don't know where he's getting that from. They had arms embargoes. The British, the imports from Czechoslovakia had to come in through an arms embargo, and the British restricted immigration after the Arab revolt, so that's why there was like Zionist terrorism against the British. Yeah, so that's not.
But you know their word didn't count for much. So with like foreign rule and imposition dividing people up, it led to increasing conflict until eventually, with overwhelming military might and munitions backed by the British, the Zionists cleared out nearly 1 million Palestinians and took over most of the land that was controlled by Palestinians. This wasn't like a back and forth between...
Maybe the Palmach? The Palmach were trained by the British because they fought in World War II, but... if you're going to count that, then there were there not Jordanian military units that had British support as well? That had British training? So, yeah.
Two militaries. There were indigenous people in the land, and based on the imposition of foreign governments, because a bunch of European powers felt guilty about the whole World War II thing and really wanted to make sure they could establish a sovereign Jewish state, they did so there, and it ended up in like the literal ethnic cleansing of the area. Like just, it wasn't like a back and forth. Like the power differential was massive.
No, but I'm not saying the Palestinians had like their army and they were threatening Israel. I'm saying
that's also not quite. The power differential was there in the end in the favor of the Zionists, but like that was partially as well because Arabs just couldn't get enough volunteers, the surrounding Arab nations. Yeah, it's not a very good characterization of the Nakba.
Surrounding Arab states, they had armies.
I'm only talking
so there
about...
was a military threat.
Sure, but I'm talking about the mistreatment of the Palestinians, which isn't justified by the fact that other Arab states are mad in the area. Like, I think the Arab states kind of had a right to be mad. All of their borders were decided by European powers, and then the European powers are like, oh, here's another country, here's a bunch of Jewish people, here you go. Also, we're kicking out 1 million Palestinians to put them there. Like, yeah, that'll make people mad.
I think we can both agree that like carving up land after World War I and II, like a lot of people got fucked over. The Kurds got fucked over. In this case, you could say the Palestinians got the raw end of the deal. I'm not denying that, but if you look at the cards they were dealt in 1948, do you think that they could have chosen a better path than they had? Relying on their Arab nations to keep attacking Israel, fully going for terrorism.
But you're simplifying.
Rejecting all those offers they got after all that happened. Like even in 2000, offers they got an amazing deal.
What offer? What deal? Well, so wait, first of all, I reject the premise here. I reject the premise here. Because every group could have done better always. Like, that doesn't mean anything. But in terms of, like, how things have gone since then, for the Palestinian people, it has just been the slow loss of their rights and the...
Palestine didn't reject those offers, but Israel did. Wait, what offers? What, the UN partition? I don't know. Okay.
Crushing of their land into a smaller and smaller portion. This isn't, like... subjective or whatever. The UN keeps denouncing this, but the US is on the Security Council and we care about Israel continuing to exist, so we back them. Like, the idea that the treatment of the Palestinian people has been continuously horrendous and unjustifiable is a broadly held position. The Palestinians aren't doing anything to the Israelis. Like, what is there like an Israeli state that's being crushed into nothing and 1 million Israelis being dispossessed the other way around. Like, there's no comparison. There is very clearly one powerful group and one powerless group getting squeezed tighter and tighter over time. Now we're seeing it break.
Like, I would see it from a different perspective. I would say they got a raw end of the deal in 48. They handled it in the worst possible way.
How?
They lost the first couple of wars.
Wait, the Palestinians didn't... What war are you referring to?
The leadership of the Palestinians.
What war are you referring to?
The 67, the 73, the 48, like there are a lot.
Wait. Those weren't Israeli... those weren't Israeli-Palestinian wars. The first one, but with 48, was the Israeli-Palestinian war. But in other ones, there were other Arab nations.
Yeah, but if you
48
allow
one as
them to
well.
attack, like they did it, you're saying like those other Arab nations just happened to attack. The Palestinians were like, okay, well, if you want to have a go at Israel, go ahead. We don't, like, honestly.
Why would they
come
not
on.
do that? They were invaded. The Palestinians were like being crushed in their own... Why would they not back the Arabs?
Sure, back the Arabs, but if you then lose, you're not going to get the same land back. That's all I'm saying. I could even understand that they're going with the Arabs. I can get their perspective, obviously. But if you then lose again and again, at a certain point, you're going to have to recalibrate and say, hold up, we're not going to defeat these guys militarily.
Mehdi Hassan's show is axed. Oh no. What, his, what fucking broadcaster was he on? Mehdi Hassan. God, all the Hassans are fucking falling down today. MSNBC cancels Mehdi Hassan's show. The fuck is this website? Okay. Canceling outspoken host. He'll become an on-camera analyst and fill-in host. Oh. Okay.
Have to search for another strategy.
But again, the Palestinians...
That's just pragmatically.
The Palestinians haven't been trying to defeat Israel militarily. From 48 up until the 80s, the primary mode of engagement from Palestinians was diplomacy. There were multiple efforts, time and time again, to try to negotiate like their territory, their settlements back.
That's not true. I would love to know what he's talking about there. Surrounding Arab countries in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. In the 40s and 50s had peace offerings with Israel. Jordan wanted that corridor linking them to the sea. Fucking Syria wanted to push the border a bit more south. And Egypt wanted a piece of Gaza as well as some more of the adjoining land. And Israel was like, no. But there's also some contention about how ready the Arab states were for those peace deals, because I think the position for the Arab states was, although they had those offerings to Israel, there was probably also a reluctance to follow through with them because they didn't want to because Israel was so unpopular in the Arab world at that time, like even more so than it is now, that they didn't really want to. The leaders thought that if they made peace with Israel in exchange for land, they would get killed. That's my understanding of the kind of peace deals of 48. Palestinians in that period Vaush is talking about were Fedayeen. That was their engagement with Israel. When was King Abdullah killed? Was he assassinated? Yeah, King Abdullah was assassinated in 51. And wasn't this because people had found out that he had done the secret deal with Israel? Wasn't that why he was killed? Am I wrong? Oh, shit. By a Palestinian nationalist. Yeah, because of the annexation of the West Bank. But did they find out that he had dealt with Black September? Why are you just naming things? This has nothing to do with Black September. We're fucking decades away from Black September. What? Shut up. I'm just naming random shit. Yom Kippur War. First Intifada. Lonerbox. Quick. Hafez al-Assad. Quick. Before it's too late. Okay. Contemporary media reports attributed the assassination to a secret order based in Jerusalem known as only as the Jihad. Muslim Brotherhood. Former terrorist. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't really know how much chance there would have been for those things to actually go through, those peace arrangements.
Rights that they had lost. The fact that other Arab nations had invaded Israel multiple times doesn't mean that Israel's justified in continuing a genocide against the Palestinians.
But those other Arab nations also held big chunks of land for decades, and they didn't give those chunks of land to the Palestinians.
So I'm not here to morally judge Syria or Lebanon or whatever. I'm just talking about Israel mistreating Palestinians. That's it. Nothing any other nation does justifies that.
Well, if those other nations are threatening Israel with invasion, and if they're funding groups in Palestine, it obviously does matter.
Well, Israel's also funding Hamas, to be fair. So no, it's not. We're not talking about Egypt or any of these countries. No. It's just about what Israel is choosing to do with the Palestinians. Israel could have chosen to make Palestinians full citizens of Israel in like a one-state solution kind of way, but they didn't want to. They wanted a Jewish ethno-state. So instead, they restricted the rights of Palestinians, illegally stole their territories in the West Bank, and crushed them in the Gaza Strip. And like nothing the Palestinians do or ever do will justify that. There's no point where a minority population does a thing bad enough that it becomes okay to ethnically cleanse them. That's literally like that's a war crime.
First off, like I don't think a one-state solution will ever work. Let's just be realistic.
Jews and Arabs lived here together until the formation of Israel.
I'm saying it won't work now. I'm not saying it couldn't have worked in the past. I'm saying how the tensions are now, it's not going to work. Putting all these people.
Yeah, and I think even there were attempts by the British to instate, to create a governance system that was essentially one state. It was rejected by both sides. Neither side wanted that. Neither side wanted like fucking parity in the area as one state. So the British fucked it off. When does this debate turn demonic? Well, it's pretty demonic now. I don't know what you're hoping for. We're about halfway. Hang on. Thanks, Germasianu. Thanks for the Prime sub. Really appreciate that. Wow.
In one state, the Jews are going to be demographically drowned. It's not going to happen. There's not ever going to be a chance of that.
Yeah,
happening.
because the Israelis are
two-state.
Because I agree, but that's because the Israelis want an ethno-state. They literally like had the potential for a single-state solution. They chose not to.
When did they have the potential for a single-state solution? That's what I want to know. I know they rejected what the British were trying to instate in the 1920s, but I thought the Higher Arab League. What the fuck they're called? The Higher Arab Committee. Sorry, I thought they rejected it too. So
remember the Holodomor?
Noe Poo, thanks for the sub. Really appreciate that. And Fancy T, thanks for the 10 Canadian. Is it necessary to de-romanticize the powerful versus powerless struggle in the Israel-Palestine situation to have a better analysis in the situation? Do we leftists only have one lens to view the world? Yes, we do. You should have it too, you genocidal piece of shit. You fucking monstrous scumbag. Okay.
But the land was divided in 48. They just wanted to keep that separation intact.
I feel very hesitant saying this because it just sounds so bombastic. But is it not kind of the case that basically everyone in the Middle East wants an ethno-state? Like, And they're not necessarily wrong to want them either, because demographic divides in the Middle East basically gives you fucking Lebanon. Like, the way that the borders were drawn up by
Remember
the
the
British and the
Holodomor?
French was so horrible that, like, being an ethnic majority is kind of important in those areas. Pete Olsen, thanks for the sub. But I don't know if there are any exceptions. I don't know about polling in the Middle East, if there are, like, there's much desire for, like, multiculturalism in the Middle East. I don't know if there is. Is there an ethno-state in the Middle East? Poland. In the Middle East, I think a lot of these countries have, like, pretty clear majorities, no? I think Syria, I mean, it's hard to say now, but Syria was, like, right now I think is about 70% Sunni. Lebanon's the diverse one, and because we've had a lot of wars because of that. A lot of civil wars.
Lonerbox, you smarmy cuck
Egypt,
bastard.
I think Egypt is Iraq is majority Shia, although I think Iraq is kind of multicultural a little bit. Let me see. Hang on. What's Egypt's Sunni Shia divide? I've never known. Yeah, no, Egypt is big majority Sunni. Yeah. They're all diverse. Are they? Let me see. I don't mean diverse as in, like, people can say Israel's diverse, but it still has a pretty clear mandate for, like, an ethnic majority. I'm just wondering if it's the same for, like, other Middle Eastern countries, like what they would be like at the prospect of shifting I know Lebanon, like, shits themselves at fucking shifting demographics, especially the Christians. The Arab identity lays over a lot of ethnic intermingling. Yeah. I thought Iraq was quite diverse, like, because I think the Shia majority in Iraq is only like 60% or something. I thought Syria did have a reputation for being quite multicultural, but I don't think it is anymore. Or, I don't, fuck, because I guess, but I don't know. Hang on. Well, now it doesn't really matter because, oh, fucking hell. Carta, yeah. Where is Iraq's demographic? I need to learn more about Kurds. What is the average Kurds like? Because I know Kurds are quite different between Iraq and Syria and Turkey. A lot of Kurds don't like each other from different countries, but I wonder what their general opinion is on, like, Kurdistan, like wanting to live in a Kurdish, like, majority. Oh. I don't know anything about Kurdistan stuff or Kurd stuff. Apparently in 2017, there was a Kurdistan region independence referendum with 92% of votes cast in favor of independence. Like, here's the again, I'm saying this with very little, like, knowledge to back it up, so I'm just guessing based on the little that I do know, it seems to be the case that it's probably not even just true of the Middle East, but it's just maybe a general thing, is that I think at least in Middle Eastern countries, it seems to be the case that being an ethnic minority or being one of the minority groups in the Middle East is kind of shit. Like, because whether it's like for Kurds in Syria, Iraq, I guess Turkey counts as well, or whether in Lebanon it's like being a Shia, like a Shia Muslim in Lebanon, being a Palestinian in Israel. Those guys don't really, they got plenty of problems, you know? But I don't think wanting to be an ethnic majority, like say Kurds wanting to break off and be in like a Kurdish majority region, or like having a Kurdish majority state, I don't think that makes them like ethnostaters. I don't think it makes Palestinians ethnostaters as well. Like if they wanted to live in a state that was majority Palestinian rather than like I think the example I asked Karantos was that imagine if Israel just like bumped up their immigration, like fucking just juiced it to the point that living between the river to the sea was like 80% Jewish. And then they were like, okay, now we'll do one state. Like if they decided that after just like if they somehow were able to just blow up the Jewish population in Israel to the point that they were like a huge ethnic majority, even if you included West Bank and Gaza, and then they decided to make it one state, and even to call it Palestine and give it voting rights, I feel like Palestinians would be pretty fucking mad about that. I feel like they would probably rather two states if if those were the two options. I don't know. Ethnostate just like when I think of ethnostate, I think of like white British and American people or like French people wanting to kick out all the Muslims. That's what I think about when I think of ethnostate. Like it's a really bad thing to be. But when I think about, but if I imagine like there was like a Lebanese Shia who, if they came to me and they were like, oh, you know, I really wish Lebanon was like a Shia majority country, or like there was a breakaway, there's like a Shia breakaway, or if the Kurds talking about it in Iraq and Syria, I'm just kind of like, I don't think that's quite the same thing, but I don't know. Shia are the largest group in Lebanon. Why are they so badly represented then? Hang on. Is that just because of the original constitution that just favors the fuck out of the Maronites? I thought the Maronites were the plurality. Why did I think that? Eh? No, wait, this is 2010. Oh, you kind of the refugee population has probably changed. 45% Christian, 48% Shia and Sunni. Okay. They have their own military group. How are they underrepresented? Right. Listen, Lebanese Shiites, like part of the reason that Hezbollah became so popular is because Lebanese Shiites got kind of fucked. They got a pretty bad deal when it came to Lebanon. They suffered from a lot of like very, very poor social service and welfare provisions, like very poor employment rates and like access to higher employment markets, lots of poverty. So the fact that they have Hezbollah, like, I guess that's kind of where that came from, you know?
That's fine, right?
It shouldn't have been divided. What right does the UN have to decide that 1 million Palestinian people are on the wrong side of a line?
Okay, but we could say this about so many borders that have been drawn. It's
Yeah.
So so you're saying like things were unfair.
Is he saying that? Why is he implying so hard that the UN was the one that did the Nakba? First it was the British, now it's the UN. Were they all in it together? What the fuck?
Back then, like, yeah, I get you.
Yes,
Like,
it was bad.
Things were unfair back then.
And
yeah.
Israel continues to do bad things to this day. But yes, like that was bad, and it continues to be bad. Israel like did a bad thing then, but they could have made it right. You know, they could have taken the land they had and gone, okay, well, we've built like a sort of, you know, Jewish-oriented secular democracy in the Middle East, and now we're going to make it equal for everyone. You know, what a modern country should do. But instead, you know, Palestinians are second-class citizens in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. You know, they have their rights restricted. And for a lot of Palestinians who live in Israel as citizens of Israel, there are still specific scrutinies they're held to. It's not an equal country.
And Palestinians could have said at a certain point, hey, this military thing, it's not working out
They
for
didn't.
us. We
They
keep losing
don't
land.
have a military.
No, but like supporting our neighbors in attacking Israel, if you want to call it that, is not really working for
If
us.
they're being kept in camps, why would they not support the enemies of the country imprisoning them? Like if you were in like Nazi Germany and you got put in a camp and the Soviets invaded and freed your camp, would you like fight the Soviets too? Of course they're going to side against their oppressors.
Just got my final marks for my dissertation back. I even cited your refugee video in my paper. You were officially partially responsible for me starting and completing my human rights law LLM. Whoa, that's really weird. Yeah, I had to do a lot of reading for that video, so I hope so. Nice one.
You know?
They could have said to their Arab nations, you know what? If you really like us that much, why don't you guys support?
Lonerbox Live, my dad sometimes says that back in the day, Lebanon was way more stable and prosperous to a degree that they called it the Switzerland of the Middle East. I've never heard that before. I mean, it was probably more when it was probably more stable before the Civil War, but I don't know how to what degree. I feel like that's the kind of thing I would hear like a Maronite say, and then they would say it was Switzerland, and then the dastardly Palestinians came, and then Hezbollah came, and then everything was bad. Like, it was good when Shiites got fucked up, and when there were less refugees before Black September. I don't know. Beirut was rich, but outside of it was poor as dirt. I can believe that. I can 100% believe that. Yeah.
Us in another way and not like paying us to have suicide attacks.
Like what?
Why don't you pay us and invest in our country, create
Israel
a
doesn't allow
stable
it.
economy?
Israel, I don't know what you think is going on down there. Israel doesn't let them have their own economy. Like they're not a separate country.
But you
Lonerbox, imagine your views if none of this was happening. You're profiting from war and death. Actually, I'm profiting from a ceasefire right now, so fuck you. Eek. And I would actually like that ceasefire to last as long as possible. I don't want it to go away. But, yeah.
Well, I don't know. My TV just talked to me. But,
Ceasefire profiteer.
You just said
Ceasefire
Israel
tourist.
can't get away with everything, right? The whole world is watching. So you're telling me that if there was like some moderate government in Palestine, Palestinian Authority, that would invite the Arab nations that used to attack Israel and would ask them, invest in our economy, we want to make a nice democratic state over here, they know that would be very good for their profile. Do you think America would say, nah, Israel?
You are pro ceasefire now? I don't think I ever said I opposed the ceasefire. I don't know why people get that impression. It's probably because I've said it as well. The problem with like the ceasefire is not like the perfect answer, you know? Like there's still problems with saying just ceasefire because it's the same problem as Israel saying get rid of Hamas. It's like, okay, what next? Because somehow Hamas has to go, and how they do that without finishing the war is like, that's a difficult question. But yeah, no, I'm enjoying profiting off of this ceasefire, to be honest. It's better than profiting off people dying and shit, you know?
We got to put it down.
There was. The Palestine Liberation Organization was a non-violent governmental org that tried to represent the Palestinian people and try to get a diplomatic solution to the many, many human rights abuses Palestinians suffered from. And it didn't go anywhere.
When was that? I feel like his timeline is all over the shop. Like, they renounced terrorism in 1988. There were still some points where I think it was Madrid conference when Arafat wouldn't condemn a terror attack or some shit.
Remember the Holodomor?
The Trippy Gamer, thanks for the sub. Really appreciate that. Oh God. Last 30 years. So I know Abbas's thing is like non-violence for all the good it's done him. Here's what I don't understand. I don't understand how Abbas is like supposed to be the non-violent guy for the PLO, but there's also that Martyrs Fund that still exists. I need to look into more about the Martyrs Fund. I guess it probably works in the sense that the PLO are a bunch of different factions. How long have they... As of 2023, they make payments via 2 funds. Prisoner payments. Families of suicide bombers. I can understand them giving money to prisoners because prisoners are like, because they probably feel like it's not right that they're imprisoned by an occupying force. Security forces, same. But I don't understand giving money to the families of suicide bombers. I don't get that. That's a little bit non-violent. Yeah, I think Vaush's timeline is a bit all over the shop here. Okay.
And that's all up to the Israelis.
Well, I don't know what you mean by that. The Palestinians had a non-violent government. Like it didn't lead anywhere. Israel's continued to crush them with time. Like what? So out of curiosity, let's say the Palestinians have, you know, they did. So this isn't hypothetical, but let's say they had a like a non-violent coalition that tried to like seek diplomatic resolution with Israel, and Israel just kept violating their human rights and didn't do anything, and nothing got better. What would you suggest the Palestinian people do?
In that case, I think, because the world is watching, that a country like America, countries like France, would definitely intervene.
But that happened, and they didn't. Okay, but what if they didn't?
Well, obviously, everyone has a right to self-defense, right? So, like, I'm gonna agree with that. Yeah, okay. In that case, then I would grant your point.
I remember the very first. I wonder if it's still there. It was a hippy dippy. It was the very first Israel-Palestine debate that I had. It was on a panel. Denims was there. I remember. I think was it Matty Cakes as well. But there was a bunch of libertarians there. I think it was about the Iron Dome, and there's a bunch of libertarians like supporting Israel. I was like, I kept on asking them questions about, like, as a libertarian, so settlement expansion, like, how do you justify that as a libertarian? Or as a libertarian, how do you justify that settlement expansion happening and Palestinians not gunning down the fucking settlement, like, construction sites and blowing them up and shit? Like, wouldn't they be in the right to do that, to defend them, to defend their land, like, as a libertarian? Wouldn't you, like, aren't these guys, like, supposed to be the biggest self-defense motherfuckers of all? But they were so I guess because they were stuck in the American fucking monkey brain that we always have to support Israel. Israel's our ally. We support Israel. But it's like, even though they violate like so many libertarian standards in the West Bank and Gaza, Fabian calls it homesteading. I've heard him say that. Yeah.
Yeah. If that happens, then I would say the Israelis are not within the realms of reason. I agree with you, Vaush. If that would happen.
So then what should the Palestinians do then, hypothetically, if Israel was not conducive to like democratic solution making?
Well, they could offer, obviously, they could fight back, but I would say we again have the war crime definition here. I wouldn't support killing civilians.
So you're okay theoretically with the formation of Hamas as long as they only target military structures and members.
Yeah. If you have a hypothetical situation where they had a moderate government, they swore off the attacks, there were no like rewards for people who blow themselves up, all that stuff was not happening. Yeah, like I would give them a chance. I would say, in that case, Israel, you don't have a right. There is no Hamas, right? There's no threat. So in that case, Israel wouldn't have the right to bomb. I fully agree.
But but what if Israel just kept bombing and controlling and taking their rights away anyway?
Well, then they would obviously be in the wrong, and I might switch. I might say, well, the morality now has come on the side of the Palestinians.
Well, but what should the
And I would switch
Palestinians
my
do?
position.
I feel like we're going in a bit of a circle here.
Resist, obviously, that's what I would do.
Okay, so like, I don't like Hamas mostly because they're militant and jihadist, but in terms of like the idea of militant resistance to the state of Israel, what we're describing.
I don't disagree with military resistance.
Didn't know you guys are pro-armed resistance after all. Sarah goes, I've always been pro-armed resistance to a degree. You just don't understand it because you're a fucking partisan, brain-damaged cunt. Like, you just don't understand. Like, from the very beginning, I said that some form of armed resistance is completely justified. Of course, it's a fucking occupation. Said that since day one. You dumb shit. Like, I guess you just missed that because I said Hamas was bad. I don't know. Fuck.
Because
that's not my main point against the Palestinians. My point is that they're being used or letting themselves be used because they have agency by Arab nations, by Iran, and those countries are using the Palestine issue to stave off like internal conflicts. To like Erdogan keeps using Palestine whenever he needs a boost in the polls. So they're becoming like a play ball of all these Arab nations, and they're not getting a good deal out of this because they are the ones getting bombed.
Didn't I like basically radicalize like an Egyptian armed resistance fire on stream? Fuck me, that debate was weird. I think by the end it sounded like he just really wanted a reason to kill some settlers. But I don't know. But no, he was an interesting guy. Where's that debate? I'll put it up for you, sure, August. It's good. You'll like it. We're debating the ethics of armed resistance. What forms of armed resistance are justified? What forms are not justified? Which forms are justified morally? Which ones are justified practically? You know. That question he asked me, though, was like, I think one of the questions he asked me was like, okay, why don't we just go ham aerial bombings on the settler communities if they have violent factions in them? Because that's what Israel does to Hamas. And I was like, that's a really, that was a good question. I thought that was a good question. Obviously, I don't support that like level because I don't think Israel's in the right when they do that. But if you can make a good faith effort to parse the violent settlers from the non-violent ones, and get into your little ski mask and shit, yeah, okay.
But they also are ruled by a dictatorship that they put in power 15 years ago. So they have like a lot of troubles, a lot of hurdles.
What
I think you can deport this. No, his idea was, and I think I kind of agree with it, just maybe not down to a T. His idea was that armed resistance, like armed violence against settlements and settler groups, is what would contribute to stopping Israelis from wanting to go into the settlements. So it contributes to stopping the expansion of settlements and might also incentivize a bunch of settlers to go back to Israel. So it's like it's part of the process of speeding up the reclaiming of the 67 borders. That was his justification for it. The thing I opposed, though, was he seemed to be very keen on just like taking out any like settler civilian, just like any of them. Whether it's a crazy religious person who comes there with a gun and rocks and starts throwing them at people, or like one of those like settler terrorists that blocks the roads and tries to force Palestinians to leave their houses. Whether it's one of those guys or just like a family that moved over the Green Line because they couldn't afford their house in Israel. Like there's a bit of a difference there. But yeah, like I've always said, those ones who like if you can pick out the particular settlers who are like armed and are crazy religious or outposters and shit like that, then yeah, they absolutely deserve to get fucking chased out, chased back over the line, you know? Yeah. Fuck them. Settlements need to fucking stop. Okay. And also, as far as any old settlement, even the yeah, chase them out. Yeah, just like just can you not have the image in your head? Just scuttle them off, you know, skedaddle them. But then also, like if there's any settlement construction, like if there's a settlement construction site, you know, just wait for the builders to fuck off for the day. Go in, take it down, you know? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. That would be based. That's a legitimate form of resistance, at least in my mind. Is that bad? Is that a problem? I don't know.
What if back in 2006, when they had that election, Hamas was the only party that presented like potentially a real solution? Because the other group, Fatah, the group that was opposed to Hamas, had been trying diplomatically to engage with Israel for a long time, and nothing had happened. In fact, things were getting worse. Year after year, things were getting worse. So if you're one of the like millions of Palestinian people, and you have two options, one of them is the status quo, where you continue to die and rot in a cage. You have no.
As long as nobody's getting hurt. The fact is, right? If you're going to do that kind of resistance, people are going to get hurt, okay? That's the trade-off that you make. Civilians will probably die in the crossfire. Military guys and cops are probably going to get hit, right? But it's either that, you bite that bullet, or just nothing happens, you know?
Freedom, and you'll never have any freedom. You don't have the kind of citizenship that you could use to leave the country. Egypt won't let you through their border. You can't travel into Israel unless you're one of the lucky few that gets a work visa. In all likelihood, you'll eventually die either to malnutrition or to a bomb or to a disease that you could have had easily treated if you lived in Israel, where there are like hospitals that actually work and have enough beds. Or you go with Hamas, a party that says, hey, listen, you know what? Things really suck and diplomacy isn't working. Maybe jihad will. Maybe the only way to break the back of our oppressors is through violent Islamic militant action. Can you understand how, given that situation, given the fact that a lot of these Palestinians were born in the ghetto, raised in the ghetto, and died in the ghetto, that a lot of them might think the status quo is not working? Like, you know, maybe I should join Hamas.
I can understand radicalization. I can understand young kids in Palestine growing up that way, thinking this is the way to go. I can understand it. I'm saying, as a political scientist, it's not working for them. Pragmatically,
it's not working.
It's not working for them.
But whether or not it's working for them isn't up to them, because diplomacy wasn't either. Like, it's to the Palestinian people. It's, do you die?
Oh, you fucking assholes pointing to the high Gaza life expectancy. Oh my god, I hate you so much. I just hate you so much. Is it, but I think, is it not still the case that some people in Gaza have to get healthcare in Israel? Wasn't that one of the? Because wasn't that the whole thing about one of the kibbutzim people? The kibbutz people were getting were killed. Was like people who actually advocated for and did work in getting Gazans to hospitals when they couldn't get particular kinds of healthcare in Gaza. Not to mention all the PTSD and other shit that they deal with in Gaza, and like the 50% unemployment and shit. Pretty rough over there. Okay. Chill.
Young fighting for your people, or do you die middle-aged because of like malnutrition, you know? Like, to them, this situation, like, who the f cares? Why should they care about their own lives? It's not like they have any in those cages. The people making this choice for them is Israel. Like, all Israel would have to do is give them something, anything. If you want Hamas to go away, by the way, all Israel would have to do is actually engage in diplomatic negotiations, pull back their illegal settlements in the West Bank, allow Palestinians to return to them, pull people from the Gaza Strip over to those settlements, or like open up land around it, or give like greater permissions or freedoms, or say, fuck it, electricity and water's on the house, you know, no more like sanctioning or like cutting off any of those. If they did that, people wouldn't join Hamas anymore, because they would realize that there's something to work for, something to believe in, you know?
Didn't they try this in 2005? Didn't Sharon remove a lot of settlers? Didn't he go against like the most right-wing Jewish fraction in his own party to get that done? He went against all those guys. I mean, because he really believed in it. Like, I'm not saying
you mean in the West Bank?
Definitely not. Yeah,
I mean, the rate,
No,
the
no.
settler, like the
Someone in Vaush's chat, and then he did the Nakba. Left frog. I hit the fucking timeline. The timeline is off the wall in this conversation. Holy shit. Oh, you're here. What the fuck are we smoking here? Sharon pulled out of Gaza, did the Nakba with the backing of the UN and the British, and Israel was funding Hamas, and the Fedayeen were non-violent. I don't know what's going on. Oh god, all kinds of. Listen, that was just the average Saturday in Israel-Palestine. You know, God.
the settler movement has continued. Sharon didn't Sharon like suffer consequences for that? Like he went against the right wing people.
Yeah, he went against them, but I'm saying like there have been moves to say, okay, more hands-off approach, you guys figure it out. And you cannot say that the Palestinian response has been great.
Well, yeah, because it didn't work. Like, that's the thing. In order for Palestinians, in order for people who have been ethnically cleansed and brutalized for nearly a century, you can't just give them one politician who promises something good and then dies, because he got a stroke after that.
But he did do something. He didn't just say it. Right?
Sure. But then it clearly didn't keep, right? Because right now the settlement movement, or the settler movement, is faster than ever. Right now, as we speak, there are settlers that have been armed by the IDF that are illegally moving to like Palestinian.
There's libertarian. He could just. I think he's talking about Gaza, though, right? Which is where Hamas took power. It's not a good argument, but he could try to make it here.
Settlements in the West Bank and clearing them out, literally just gunning them down. There have been over 200 now Palestinian deaths in the West Bank since October 7th, and a lot of it is just settlers and the IDF just clearing people out. And there's a scuffle, some guy throws a rock, they get shot, you know. If like the Israeli people are the ones, you know, Israel is the one who has done this brutality, they need to show real good faith, and that means years of reparations.
Why can't he distinguish between the West Bank and Gaza? I told you, like everyone who talks about this, when people talk about this subject, right, you have to start from you have to remember that most people who talk about this subject don't know which is which. Okay, I will say that very boldly. At least not, I mean, in the fucking white English-speaking world, okay? Arabs probably know which is which, or other people know which is which. But I've said this, okay? Look at it. Because people think West Bank is this one because it's in the West. Okay? Vaush is streaming in 100 minutes. I'm sure he would love to talk. Yeah, okay. I'll see what he says.
I don't mean like one politician does one good law. I mean like, they need to like dedicate themselves to repairing this, to mending this, you know? Like the Palestinian people deserve the prostration after everything that's been done to them. And then maybe we will have peace. But until then, why would they not choose Hamas?
Because the Hamas approach is not working for them.
So neither was diplomacy. At least this way they die fighting.
Whoa.
I would say the first problem for the Palestinians is to get rid of Hamas.
They didn't have Hamas for decades, and it still didn't work. Israel needs to be the one. Israel has shown that they will not do good on Palestinians whether or not Hamas is there. When Fatah was in power, they still didn't do good to the Palestinians. The only hope is for Israel to put the first foot forward. And again, Israel's the one with the power. What would Palestinians even do right now? 3/4 of the people in the West Bank have fled their homes. Like what? Like they're going to have like a democratic election while all of them are huddling in refugee tents trying like not to get bombed or whatever. Like Israel is the one with the power. They can turn the water on like that. They can stop the bombing like that. They can, turn the electricity on like that. The Palestinian people
you meant to say Gaza, not the West Bank.
Deserve it. Does Israel, the state of Israel, deserve to not be heckled by Hamas? Honestly, the state of Israel has done 1,000,000 times worse to the Palestinian people than Hamas has ever done to Israel. In terms of like moral culpability, Israel's job first is to apologize and to act, I think.
Okay, let me sketch you a scenario. right? So let's say Hamas is almost
Did Fatah ever fully control Gaza? I guess not fully, no. I guess they were technically there. No. I guess they were technically the government there in 2005 until 2007 until they excuse me, until they lost the election, right? But I think Hamas still had a fairly sizable level of control there, right? They controlled like almost half of the mosques at that point because of their turnover from the charity group. So they were still pretty influential. I don't really know how effective the PA government was in Gaza. It probably still was relatively, because it was obviously during the war when the guys from Fatah got fucking thrown off rooftops by Hamas when they were kicked out. So yeah, technically Fatah did rule Gaza for 2 years.
eradicated. There's a new, more moderate government installed in Gaza.
I don't think you can eradicate Hamas, to be clear, but
okay, yeah, sure. It's going to be a tough one. I get it. In response, Netanyahu gets voted out in a couple of months. A more moderate Israeli prime minister comes in. There's some perspective there. But if they're going to gamble on Hamas again, this is not going to work for them.
it's
Just
not.
from the Palestinian view, right? If you have a choice right now, knowing that Netanyahu can really lose the next election, what is more pragmatic to do right now? Support Hamas or say, let's go a more moderate route now because
You are talking.
there might be a window of opportunity here.
You are talking about an area where 3/4 of the people are in refugee camps. They haven't had an election in almost 20 years. You're asking for them to suddenly engage in like this anti-sociological paradigm shift when they have no reason to believe anything will change. Meanwhile, Israel, which has all the power, should not put forward the first, the first apology. No, I disagree strongly. Right now, like you are looking at a situation where one person is on the ground being beaten to death, and you are asking them, not the person with the hammer, to act well and to be trustful that he might, stay his hammer if they're kind, or like you're running up to the guy who's being like beaten with a bat, and you're like, dude, if you apologize loud enough, maybe they'll stop beating you with a bat.
Anti-sociological paradigm shift. It's a funny sentence.
Even though they beat you with a bat when you were apologizing to begin with, No. It's Israel that has to do the work here. And I don't understand what the opposition is to this, Like, why not? Like, the settlements in the West Bank are illegal. They have to give them up, The treatment of the people in the Gaza Strip is illegal, They have to stop.
I agree with you on the settlements. I don't agree with you on, this is how I view it, right? If Israel pulls back now, it will seem like a reward for what Hamas has done. Do you agree with me? If they would loosen up right now, if they hadn't gone in a couple of weeks ago,
you don't get to do literal war crimes, because not doing war crimes would be seen as being conciliatory to the terrorist group. They've already killed like 15,000 people. Like, that's not a justification. Like, oh, they have to keep killing civilians because otherwise they'll look weak. I don't care. Make them look weak. Let Hamas have the win. I don't care.
Well, but they're going after Hamas. They're not just bombing people randomly.
They are.
Right?
They literally are. Like, they are literally just.
Evidence.
They've literally been striking like hospitals and refugee camps. The reason Israel hasn't been bragging about Hamas casualties is because there are basically none.
Is that true? Has Israel given an estimate for how many Hamas they've killed? I feel like I saw something on, but I can't remember where I saw it. Yeah, the IDF 4 days ago said 4,000 Hamas fighters have died so far. That was from Gallant. Is that how you say his name? "1,500 fighters killed on October 7th and 8th. Thousands were killed inside Gaza 4,000. So would that be? Does that include? Subsequently, it's 4,000. So it would be like they're saying they killed 5,500. Okay. I don't know. Don't know how they're judging that if they're all in buildings and shit. But okay. But the IDF are saying they've killed lots of Hamas people. What's this?
Gone. I love Israel. I love Israel, Gone.
Okay.
Hamas isn't that stupid. There are tunnels. They fled to the south the moment they realized they would be invading from the north. Like 15,000 dead. How many of them are Hamas insurgents? Israel can't even point to what? A few dozen? It's like nothing. It's just civilians. They open
No,
the...
it's commanders. That's the ones that get properly confirmed by like both sides. Is like usually when it's commanders and high up people, like named people.
Or by like missile striking a bunch of Palestinian journalist houses where they live, their homes, directly with precision munitions. You know, like their goal here was not to clear out Hamas. They've been wanting to kill the Palestinians for a long time. There are politicians in government literally saying, like, here's our chance to get rid of them, you know? Netanyahu compared them to biblical enemies of Israel. Like, you know, they're here to play for keeps. This is not like, you know, they're not going to hold off.
No, I fully agree that the most hawkish guys are going to use this opportunity. Definitely.
But those people are in power. Like, those are the people in power.
Yes, but on the Israeli side, at least we have elections, so we have a chance to get rid of them. On the Palestinian side, there are no elections, so we don't have a chance to get rid of them.
There's no need to get rid of them with an election. Hamas will go away if the Palestinian people are given an opportunity to live their lives in peace. Nobody jumps into jihadist insurgency when their life is going well. And also, what election?
Well,
3/4
Bin Laden. Oh shit. No, I know what he means. Obviously Hamas gets recruits because kids grow up in Gaza, they get a lot of trauma from the bombings, and then they see a bunch of their friends die, and they're like, "Fuck this, I'm joining Hamas." Like that's probably how it happens for most of them, right? It's pretty fucking sad. The problem is if Israel makes any concessions now and they start giving things to Palestinians, like at an unprecedented scale, which is what it would have to be to meet this standard, is like, like how do you stop that from just being like the Gaza pullout? They're just looking like you're rewarding violence. Like it looks like you're rewarding Hamas. Yeah. Unless they just focused on West Bank stuff, if they just found, like, if they just strengthened the PA and just started negotiating with them, and then it looks like they're rewarding the non-violent side rather than the violent side, I don't know.
Of them have been ousted from their homes. Like you're running up to a person who's being beaten to death with a bat, you know, like what they're...
Well, the point you made about radicalization is not true. Like, especially in Europe, there are a lot of guys who radicalized, who are like very highly educated, like very smart guys.
Yeah, but in terms of
ISIS,
in terms of like the jihadist militarization thing, like we saw with ISIS, we see with the Taliban, we saw with the Mujahideen, we've seen with Hamas over and over and over again. It's oppression and foreign imposition that does this to them. ISIS, after our invasion of Iraq and the destabilization and power vacuum, the Taliban and the Mujahideen because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and Hamas because of decades of Israel not playing ball with attempts at diplomacy from the Palestinians. Like, the reason Hamas exists is because people think diplomacy cannot give them anything, that diplomacy can't work, and right now it seems it can't. Like, it hasn't worked.
So you don't think the reason Hamas exists is because these people have a certain Islamic view of violence and they agree with Hamas that they want to kill the Jews?
What do you mean?
You don't think that's a factor?
What do you mean Islamic view of violence? The only people doing mass killings,
jihad, right?
The only group here doing mass killings are the Jews. They're the ones doing the mass killings. The mass killings are happening, not hypothetically, but in reality, and they're being done by an advanced military state, and it's the Jews doing it. Like, that's the group doing it.
Hamas is doing all the killing it can do. You agree with me on that, right?
What does that even mean?
Well, literally what it says, like, everyone they can kill, they will kill. They showed that when they had a couple of hours.
Gay Fesh is in there saying by Israel, not the Jews. Nah, I think it's better when you say the Jews, right? Because it's the language that people in the Middle East use when they talk about Israel. And it also means like if you have to say Israel and rather than the Jews, because the sentence you're saying would sound shit if it would sound anti-Semitic if you say the Jews. Nah, you can say the Jews. Fuck it. I noticed I do it. Like, Gay Fesh. Vaush, you're gonna get clipped for this.
In Israel,
No,
if they had the opportunity,
they didn't
they're going to kill
attack.
the most.
Because at the end of the day, most of the world's Jews, I think, well, like almost half of them, like 40 something percent of the world's Jews live in Israel. So they're basically all Zionists, just about. And most of the world's Jews have some level of sympathy for the state of Israel or some belief that it should exist and all that. So, yeah, you should be able to apply it. The Jews. Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't
attack what?
They didn't attack.
Most of international Jewry. Norman. Yeah, Norman. Finkelstein, I'll tell you. Yeah. He'll come in. God, I've noticed that looking around at Finkelstein's like little vlog posts and shit, or like Substack, that guy plays the Holocaust fucking card harder than any pro-Israel person I've ever seen. It's crazy. That guy just loves telling you. He just loves the fact that his parents died in the Holocaust. I don't know. I should watch his Piers Morgan one though, because apparently that got quite popular amongst Pierce's Arab viewers. No, actually, I want to watch the Basim Youssef one. I much prefer him to Finkelstein, actually. Yeah.
Against Israeli civilians. Israel
He's forced into it. He says he doesn't want to bring it up often. Nah, sorry. He's not a fucking 4-year-old. No one's forcing him to say anything. He says it because he wants to, because he's a provocateur, because he's an antagonist. That's why he says it. If you can't see that, by the way, if you are fooled by him saying, I don't want to be doing this, like, nah, you're a sucker. You're literally just getting scammed by a scam artist. Like, if you believe that. He says it because he likes saying it.
has been doing attacks against Palestinian civilians many times over. I don't like if your argument is that Hamas is somehow more violent than Israel, then this is like mathematically unprovable.
Well, I would say Hamas has less opportunity to be violent.
Almost like they have significantly less power.
I agree, they have less power. I agree, but it doesn't make them the moral side because they have less power.
I'm not
doesn't
saying
mean anything.
I'm not saying that Hamas is the moral side. I'm saying the Palestinians are broadly.
Yeah, but as long as Hamas is a representative of the Palestinian people,
they weren't for decades.
You can't separate those two. You cannot.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, what you're describing is literally the pretext for a war crime, collective punishment. You're describing
all war is collective punishment.
No, it is not. Absolutely.
Yes.
No, the indiscriminate slaughter of civilians because of the government, then you just think all war is war crimes.
No, I'm saying all war is collective punishment.
No, it is not. War is supposed to be militaries fighting other militaries. And if civilians die, it's either accidental or because they were incidental, like casualties when attacking military targets.
Is there not going to be a discussion here about Gaza and how there are no like Hamas bases like that say this is the Hamas base, like that Hamas doesn't make the effort to separate themselves from civilian infrastructure? I mean, if they did, they would just lose. They would just all die. Like, so I can see why they do it, but they do it. Like, yeah. We're not going to get into the human shields memes. Oh no. No, I don't think Finkelstein's parents died. I think they were in camps, and I think the rest of his family died. I think that's what he says. Yeah.
But Israel is taking measures in limiting civilian.
They are bombing indiscriminately, and them saying, "Hey, go to the south now. You have 24 hours to get down below this line we've drawn in the sand," and then missiles striking the caravan of people moving south.
That one was a Hamas attack. The one with the bus, you mean, that blew up?
The strike that killed like dozens of people, that was on the direct line from them moving from the northern part to the southern part.
I know there was one where a bus blew up, which definitely wasn't Israel, but I'm not sure about all of them, so I'm not gonna.
An enormous number of civilians have died. Like nobody in their right mind could call that. Like, why would Israel directly missile strike over a dozen Palestinian journalist houses if they weren't just trying to like silence all of the people who could be reporting what they're doing?
Yeah, well, obviously, I wouldn't agree to that. So,
well, but okay. How can you believe, like, no, but it's not just you can't agree to it. That's insane. This is the most deadly conflict for journalists in over 30 years, since the end of the Cold War. Like, Israel is, and it's not the Hamas that's doing that. Israel is cutting off everything, cutting off power, cutting off internet, killing the journalists, killing UN workers, Red Crescent and Red Cross workers. Like, the idea that this is some kind of targeted, like, restrained strike against Hamas is insane. That's just not happening.
I would say that Israel is restraining itself.
I just don't think that lines up with like any sane assessment of the facts. Like I guess they could nuke the Gaza Strip. Like they're restraining.
Are they going to talk about the facts? I want to hear the arguments for the. Like it might be. I haven't looked at all the details of what Israel's doing in Gaza with the bombing campaigns. They've obviously gone a lot more ham than they had in the previous Gaza wars. But that's also because their objective is a lot more fucking heavy. What's your opinion on Rashid Khalidi? I like him. I like his books. Well, the one book that I read of his.
Themselves in the sense that they could do that. But in terms of like fighting this war responsibly and without collective punishment, the members of the Israeli government have literally invoked collective punishment. They have literally said, like, as long as Hamas, like, they are all Hamas. They all support Hamas, therefore they're all Hamas. They're invoking the war crime.
Yeah, but I do think that when you're fighting a dictatorship, it's different than when you're fighting a democracy.
There isn't a dictatorship there. It's just an open-air prison. It's not a country. They don't have a military.
But how? So you don't consider Hamas to be a dictatorship?
It's a prison that Israel created that has a prison gang that runs it. They had a government, and that government tried to fight for their rights, and it didn't work. Israel wouldn't listen.
I think it's probably okay to call Hamas are a government. They collect taxes. They provide jobs. They have a police force. They do have military. Like they have militants. They have training facilities for their military. Some of them were actually strangely close to the border. They administer welfare. They control mosques. I don't know. What the... Tunnel taxes. They get foreign aid. they're not a state, but they are kind of a government. They're like a de facto government, yeah.
But right now, Hamas is the governing institute in Gaza, right?
They are the only group with power there apart from Israel. Like, they're a prison gang, sure. Like, in the sense...
same could be said of a prison gang. No. What fucking foreign aid the prison gangs get? The prison gangs collect taxes from the entire prison. I guess maybe some of them do, eh? Who knows? Do they administer welfare services and control mosques? Sure, yeah. Yeah, I guess, you know, they take cigarettes from the people and they and they give out they give out fucking roofies to they give out Valium to people if they want them. I don't know.
That a prison gang could take control of a prison, but who built the walls?
Yeah, I guess it's basically the same.
Okay, you know what? I get where you're coming from. I would just put way more agency with the Palestinians. I just think you're only viewing it from one side because they have more power.
I mean, generally speaking...
It's not a dictatorship under any definition. We have a new winner in Vaush chat.
only viewing it from one side because they have more power.
I mean, generally speaking, the group with the more power is supposed to be the one to right the wrongs, especially when on one hand,
That's true.
the Palestinians have done basically nothing to Israel, and Israel has engaged in decades of genocide and ethnic
come
cleansing.
come on. There were like a lot of attacks.
Wait, if you want to do like
before they built the wall, there were a lot of suicide attacks.
there have always been more deaths.
A lot of intifadas, a lot of rockets.
No, I am coming on here. If you want to compare the number of deaths on both sides, it has always been more Palestinians dead. The number of Palestinians, if you include the numbers who have been displaced from their homes, never to return because they've never been given rights.
Which of the old historians has the most compelling criticism of the new historians? Thanks for the $10, Everyday Skeptic. I don't know. Sorry.
Right to return, it goes into well over 1 million people. What does that compare to? Some rocks, some bottle rockets fired across? Israel's a modern military state. Maybe they could just not do the ethnic cleansing. Maybe Israel could use its enormous power to just do what every other modern Western state has done and not be an apartheid state. But they can't do it because they are obsessed with the idea of being a Jewish ethno-state. So they won't. The people there, both Israelis and many of them, because Israelis tend to be pretty far right in the issue, and their government are militantly opposed to the idea of handing over any power in government to Arabs.
I don't believe in counting dead bodies to determine who's in the right.
Well, that's convenient for Israel, considering the way things have stacked up.
No, because if it were the other way around in any other conflict...
Oh, he's going to do the Ben Shapiro. Oh, no. The British killed more, the Allies killed more German civilians than this. Yeah. Is that even true, though? Well, I guess we went between, like, the British and the Germans, but, like, I think even then the Nazis probably killed more civilians if you count the Soviet Union. Like, the siege of Leningrad, didn't they kill, like, 1 million Soviet citizens?
Smarmy bastard.
Yeah, the Soviets lost, like, 19 million civilians, yeah. How many Germans were killed by the British? I don't know, I can just show you this on screen, sorry. I don't know, whatever. It's like the Ben Shapiro argument.
I still wouldn't use that measurement. Like, if Ukraine now starts killing, like, a lot of Russian soldiers, and they, like, end up killing way more.
Those are Russian soldiers, not civilians. If Ukraine started killing a bunch of Russian civilians, that actually would change things quite a bit.
It would? So you're saying that if Ukraine right now started bombing Russian cities, like Russia is bombing Ukrainian cities, even if Ukraine is defending itself and bombing because they want Russia to leave their country, you would say that the moment they kill more, they're in the wrong.
Yes.
That's a ridiculous standard.
No, that's called war crimes. Yeah. Just because your country is being invaded and the Russians commit war crimes does not mean that you get to go, oh, well, guess we'll do yours, and then start strategically bombing like Moscow or whatever. Yeah, there are war crimes.
So you're saying that if you're invaded by a country, you don't have the right to bomb that country in order to get them to leave your country?
Yeah, you can, not indiscriminately. Russia is not bombing Ukrainian cities and only targeting military targets. Russia's just level.
Does that mean Hamas does war crimes? Every rocket that Hamas fires is basically a war crime because you can't aim the rockets, right? And I learned that from the UN reports. Okay, so yeah.
Ukrainian cities. If Ukraine engaged,
I agree.
If Ukraine engaged in targeted bombing of military assets, that might lead to some civilian casualties, but I think that's acceptable within the rules of war. What Russia has done to Ukraine, and what Israel is doing right now to the Gaza Strip, is just indiscriminate civilian massacre.
Well, I believe that the Russians are doing it indiscriminately. I don't think the Israelis are, but
I just don't think that's... I mean, you can agree or disagree. Like, the numbers, like every humanitarian rights group on the planet is like ringing alarm bells right now. The people whose job it is to study genocide are ringing the alarm bells.
The numbers count is just not a good argument. Like, there are so many other arguments. Just don't use the numbers count. It's just stupid.
2 months and 15,000 dead is pretty extraordinary, especially considering we're talking about one area the size of a single American city. Like, you can look at satellite maps right now of Gaza, and it's literally nothing. There is no Gaza anymore. They're not going back, dog. What do you think is happening to the 2 million Palestinians that are now crammed in the southern part of the Gaza Strip? Do you think they're going back to the molten ash heap that is the northern part of the Gaza Strip. There aren't houses to go back to.
Do you think that if you would believe for 1 second that Israel wants to eliminate Hamas, you might not believe it, but just for the sake of the argument.
They like Hamas. They're pro-Hamas.
Okay,
Jesus
but for the
Christ.
sake of the argument, let's say Israel wants to
Like, that's... I don't know. Some of them might have kind of been as a kind of convenience, but not anymore, I don't think.
eradicate Hamas. That's gonna take that's gonna cost a lot of lives. You agree with me, right? Like even if you do it in the best possible way.
Maybe you shouldn't do it then.
If you want to eradicate 40,000 people, some estimates are up to that from Hamas fighters, it's gonna cost a lot of people's lives. Like,
then don't do it.
That's terrible.
No, you don't get to just like, oh well. Sadly, our goal involves killing a million.
Yeah, Bibi said that. Like, Bibi's, I think, as far as I know, the Israeli government haven't denied that quote, although it's really, really hard to verify as well. Because I think it was like a hearsay. Like someone said that they heard him say this, or yeah, that's all we've got. But apparently he said it in the Knesset, so I don't know. But yeah, he said that if you want to stop the establishment of a Palestinian state, you should let Hamas continue to exist, basically. But I don't think that's their position now. I think October 7th might have led him to think that wasn't the greatest idea. I think it's probably safe to say they want Hamas gone now.
Civilians. Guess we have to kill a million civilians. You just don't do it.
But
then.
the goal is self-defense, right?
No, it's not. No. Hamas is the one acting in self-defense. Israel did this to the Gaza Strip. Israel isn't acting in self-defense. They're the ones who created the situation. Israel didn't exist here. They partitioned the territory, Nakba'd the Palestinians, fought war after war.
They did not partition. The UN partitioned.
They partitioned with the consultation of Zionist groups, and Zionist militias were given weapons and then a full-on army. Yes, they did not directly do it, but they were fully part of the process, consented to it, and were participant in the removal of the Palestinians during the Nakba. Time after time after time, it's Israelis who have been the aggressors. And now, after cramming a bunch of Palestinians into a concentration camp, I
would love to know why he thinks that, why he's talking as if the UN was the ones, the UN or the British, like, doing the Nakba. I don't know. Yeah.
Act indignant that a few bottle rockets find their way out. Well, I'm really sorry, Israel, but you did make all of this happen, and you could stop it.
Whoa.
Israel could stop it and make life better for them and for the Palestinians. They're jeopardizing their own safety. The safety of Israeli people is jeopardized every time that dumb Netanyahu, who, by the way, the Israelis voted for, as long as we're doing the you're responsible for who you vote for bit, okay? Netanyahu has continuously jeopardized the safety of Israeli civilians by putting them at odds with every neighboring Arab state. Constant aggression and aggression and aggression.
Did the Nakba involve concentration? No, when he says concentration camp, he's talking about Gaza. That's what he's talking about, right? He's not talking about the Nakba. No. As far as actual concentration camps go, I don't think Israel's ever used them. I think. Have they ever used concentration? I don't know. They've used typhoid to poison the wells. But I don't think they've used concentration camps, no. They've used brutal prison systems. They've used torture. Some that are actually quite specific for Palestinians, I think. But no, I don't think they've used concentration camps.
They're never going to live there peacefully if you keep throwing rocks at everyone you live by and the people you live next to, the Palestinians.
So you're just going to ignore the Abraham Accords? That's also Netanyahu making enemies with neighboring states? Him like having peace deals?
I mean, how's that working out? Like a bunch of neighboring countries have literally threatened to militarily intervene if they don't stop killing Palestinians. Clearly it didn't work that well.
Okay, so because the situation now changed, you're not going to recognize.
They changed
what
it.
happened.
Well, he attempted the Abrahamic Accords, but it doesn't really matter if you're going to keep genociding the Palestinians. All the neighboring Arab nations are going to rile up about it, right?
Yeah, because they find it a very useful front, right? The Palestinian front. They use it to distract their own people from internal problems.
Yeah, just like Netanyahu uses Hamas. Yeah,
they keep.
Did neighboring states threaten to intervene? I know Hezbollah does. I don't know if any like Abraham Accords states did. Did they? Like, did Saudi? Probably not. Oh, Iran. But wait, I don't think Iran was part of the fucking Abraham Accords. Abraham Accords was, let's find it. United States, Israel, Bahrain, Emirates, Morocco, Sudan. Oh yeah, because Morocco made peace. Does this mean Morocco has made peace with Israel? I think Morocco might have been threatening to scrap Abraham. I feel like I've read that. Let's see. Morocco threatened Abraham. Morocco is key to bolster it. That's not okay. Friendly ties are facing some backlash. I think that's a problem with a lot of these states, is that since 48 it's probably been the case, is that the populations of these Arab states are so much more pro-Palestinian than the leaders are. Even in 48, there were protests because the Arab states, they felt like in Egypt and Jordan, because they thought that the states weren't doing enough to help the Palestinians in the war. I read that from Pape's book, I think. But I guess the leaders have to be a lot more pragmatic about it, and I guess they can be because they're dictatorships. So yeah.
Keep them in refugee camps. They don't give them rights. They don't give them permits to work in
Oh,
their...
Morocco did it for Western Sahara. Hey, well. Imperialism. I like that. Well, you're gonna love me. Shit. These guys, can't take them anywhere.
countries, even though they're their Muslim brothers. And I don't hear you talking about Egypt.
Wait. You can't.
Morocco got that colonizer grind set. I don't know anything about Western Sahara. I just, oh yeah.
They can't give them permits to. They're in a camp.
Jordan can't give them work permits.
The
Palestinian refugees in Jordan. They're over a couple of million.
Yeah, the refugees. We're talking about the people in the Gaza Strip. Hey, why are there refugees in Jordan? That's weird. What are they refugees from?
From losing land after losing a war.
From being ethnically cleansed. That's what that means. Ethnic cleansing is when you clear people of an ethnicity out of a territory, often after they lose a war. You know, it's possible to win a war and then to simply control the area. The part where you remove everyone of a given skin color or religion or whatever, that's the ethnic cleansing part. They chose to do that.
Do you know of one country that doesn't torture terrorists? Probably like Switzerland. I don't know. I don't know. Listen, I'll come back to you with that. Okay?
Chose to give back the Sinai. They offered up the Golan Heights.
First of all, okay, they did not offer up. They fought for the Golan Heights. They took it. People have asked them to give it back. Also, they were pressured into giving.
Switzerland torture people. Come on, fuck them. Who? Iceland? Does Iceland torture people? Come on, Iceland. Give me one. Give me a W.
They offered it up in
Nauru probably does torture people. Yeah, Nauru is very bad for the fucking refugees like from Indonesia and shit. Yeah.
In return for peace.
In return for peace. They also were pressured into giving the Sinai back. Also, this is a pivot. This has nothing to do with the Palestinians. The Palestinians were not Egypt. They didn't fight. The Palestinians weren't at war with the Israeli army over the Sinai Peninsula. This is, again, like you keep pivoting when I say, like, Israel chose to do an ethnic cleansing. Why are there so many Palestinian refugees in Jordan? It's like, oh, well, because they chose to do it, you know? Like, at the end of the day, Israel just does monstrous shit all the time, and it gets so indignant when anything bad happens to it. When it causes, like, why does everyone hate me? I don't know, dude. Have you done anything hateable, Israel? Have you done anything to antagonize your neighbors? I wonder.
So what did you expect to happen in like
really quickly, I just have to say, I hate this. What do you expect to happen? Okay, if Israel did something, they did something. I'm not talking about like, oh, after this, what do you expect? If they did a thing, they did a thing. What did Israel expect? Did anything obligate Israel to make millions of Palestinian refugees? Was there like like a divine mandate that made them do it. It was their choice. They chose to do that because the people who did it were evil. And that's all there is to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the Palestinians chose Hamas.
Yeah, in 2006.
And they chose intifadas.
My argument is that at that point, Israel had given them basically no other choice. And you haven't responded to that, by the way. Like I keep arguing over and over again, like decades and decades of diplomatic efforts. It seems like you weren't even aware of them because you framed like all the wars as though they were like fought between Israel and Palestine.
Oh.
Yeah, but you're acting like the Palestinians were like standing on the side, like, okay, guys, fight this war.
Again,
obviously not.
Yeah, why would they not support the people who are fighting the people, brutalizing them? No. Again. No.
I get you.
No, the Palestinians are again. This isn't a matter of, well, what do you expect? The Palestinians are morally correct in supporting the enemy of their enemy. The Israelis are morally incorrect in doing genocide. You can't say, well, what did you expect? Why would Israel not do genocide after the people they were genociding sided with the people who were trying to stop the genocide? No shit. Of course they would side. The Palestinians have every right to. The Palestinians have every right to basically any support of any military opposition to Israel. They are being genocided. This is like libertarianism.
Well, like even Hamas? What I'm pretty sure Vaush opposes Hamas. So there's not any military opposition, sure, okay.
101. I mean, they're literally being kept in an open-air prison. Why would they not, like, Israel cuts their water, man. They're in the Gaza Strip, even before the conflict, only like 10% of people.
Why would Israel owe them water?
They live in Israel. It's Israel territory. What do you mean owe them water?
They left the Gaza Strip in 2005.
What? It's still Israel. The military occupation left. It's still Israel. Israel controls the water in. This is what I mean. This is why I like talking to people like you, because you're monsters.
Whoa! It got mad over the agua. Oh shit. Oh god. Let me find it. They don't owe them water. They owe them agua. All right. How many I think Israel does owe Gaza water because they control the border. That's the argument. Much of Gaza's water is controlled by Israel. 3 seawater desalination plants can produce 7% of Gaza's clean water needs. 3 pipelines from Israel provide 13%. Is it 13%? Where do they get all the rest from? Is it apparently it's from underground wells? Oh, underground wells with an active fire. So it's from within. Yeah, that whole thing about how you only get like 70 liters a day of water is that in the West Bank? What's it like in Gaza? What the fuck is this? Centrist nurse with $2. Thanks very much. I hear this often. What's the argument for the 97%? What do you mean 97% of water? They don't have the desalination working. Oh, because they need fuel for it. Yeah. Yeah. Is that why Israel controls water? Because they control fuel access. So it kind of is. Okay, I got you. That makes sense.
You go through like the runabout, but then I hear, well, why would it be bad exactly for Ukraine to do war crimes back? It's like you don't comprehend what is or isn't acceptable reprisal on a social level. You say you're a libertarian, but you're okay with the police and the military, the least libertarian institutions in the world. And then when we get right down to it, who said 2 million people?
I don't know why you would ever say Gaza is Israel. That's a really bizarre thing to say.
Had to be given water. Who said water is a human right? I do say that. And if people like you are the kinds of people that Palestinians had to deal with when they tried to fight for their rights, no shit they turned to Hamas. Because they probably
Whoa.
thought that, I don't know, suicide bombing buildings full of people like you is a far more effective route to their freedom than trying to explain to people like you why they deserve to have water as a human right. How did you even pose that as a question? Like, because Israel left, like,
God.
the military occupation, they just die now? They just get to die?
They chose Hamas.
They chose Hamas.
Let
I'm
Hamas
choosing to
take
end the
care
call.
of the woman.
Nice.
Bro.
What a monster, dude. That guy pivoted off of everything, dog. Holy shit. He started grinning. He grinned nervously, yeah. Yeah, like, I again, like, I
know what the fuck. All right. That was a very strange debate. The history was mental. Oh, God. I think the guy brought up Camp David, then Vaush started talking about the Nakba, and then I don't know. That lib dude wasn't that unreasonable. No, he kind of was, right? He wasn't really making any decent points, I don't think. Would you debate Vaush on this topic? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I feel like I just want to correct all his blind spots on the history, but he's I don't think he wants that. Would you debate Tabernacle? I would definitely debate him because there's a lot more like big substantial disagreements with him, yeah. What like if I had to make a note of some of the blind spots that we saw? Debate Finkelstein. I mean, talking to him in emails sounds like an absolute fucking shit show, so don't think I'll be doing that. But I don't think Tabernacle wants anything to do with me. He acknowledged that in his last video as well. He was just like, why? Why would I debate him? Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard anything from him. If I want to talk to Finkelstein, I need to call his landline. Yeah. Have a fucking Telegram exchange. Read 3 of his books that he emails me before starting. Fuck that. Okay, what were we talking about here? The British and the UN did not take part in the Nakba. Okay, that's one. What else was it? Oh, PLO peaceful in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I mean, they didn't really exist in the 50s and 40s and 50s. Well, before 1988. I guess Arafat's role in the peace process failing, because he did have some role. I don't think it was completely his fault, but he did have some part. He didn't stop the Second Intifada, which is pretty shit. What else do we have here? I don't know. The PLO. I know PLO was 64. Yeah, I know. Before that was Fedayeen. But again, he was saying that the Palestinians had like a non-violent diplomatic institution that was wanting to negotiate with Israel like in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I don't know why he would say that though, because that's definitely not the case. Like everyone wanted to fight with Israel back then. Another bus and after 48. Can you research the PLO after 73? Did they try peaceful approaches there? As far as I know, they didn't renounce terrorism until 88. That was when
Lonerbox,
Arafat made his big announcement to the UN.
Smarmy cuck bastard.
What else? Something about Israel always being the aggressor. Oh, Netanyahu funding Hamas. That was kind of like a big one. And I think he's kind of weird in his timeline of when exactly that happened. He didn't mention the genius of the Trump peace plan. Oh, don't forget the Trump peace plan. Oh, between 74, that was the fucking Lebanese Civil War. That's what the PLO were doing, wasn't it? The PLO were in the Lebanese Civil War from the 70s to the 80s. From like 75 to 85 now. Viewing it strictly as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Insistence on excluding other Arab forces. Tries to make it more simple. I don't know. I feel like there's a few problems there. Yeah. Yeah, the money in suitcases was humanitarian aid. Yeah. So you could even argue that they should have let it go through because I think even there's a quote from Netanyahu saying that, like, at least if it's under our supervision, it'll go to humanitarian purposes. Yeah. That's what Bibi thought. He thought that with Israel doing it, not only would it divide the Palestinians, but it would also be less likely to go to weapons if it was being supervised by Israel.